Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. I'm Rick, the Honest Mechanic, and welcome to part 2 of the snowplow build. That's right, part 2. If you haven't seen part 1, it's down in the description box. You might want to check it out before you follow this video. But in this video, we're going to be finishing up top to bottom. We're going to actually pull out the plow. We're going to go try it out and see how it actually does work. But we have a lot of work cut out for us. We're going to do some welding. We're going to do possibly some adjustments. And of course, mounting it properly onto the bike and seeing what needs to be done to make it work properly. So, this might be a long video, so let's get to it. Alright, now that you guys have taken a few minutes to look at the other video, we can get started on this video and what we're going to do today. So we've already tackled a lot of things. However, as you remember, the plow wasn't raising quite high enough for my liking. I mean, 2 inches is not enough to do much with when you're trying to ramp up some snow. So we added a nice pivot point right over here. So this pivot point is what is hopefully going to do all the work as to at least raising the front of the plow. And I'm hoping that it doesn't end up turning into like a loader where it scoops the snow. I'd still want to be able to ramp it. But I mean, we won't know until we actually try that. But how are we going to keep this down below and how are we going to keep it from not flipping onto itself? Well, I'm going to have to weld a couple of angles down below in this area so that this will rest onto the bottom here. And I'm going to be doing that with the help of my trusty old, that's right, I still kept it, I'm still working on it, my blueprint. Yeah, it's actually getting worse by the minute. It's terrible. But I understand what I'm trying to do here. I'm just trying to give you guys some visual reference. You know, right here we got my little spring setup that's going to hold everything together. You know, the arrow makes it show like it's going up and down. I know, guys. I know it's terrible. Don't worry about it. Just follow along and we'll get to it. So now the next step is I got a couple old springs from my kid's trampoline. I kept a bunch because the trampoline broke, but I like to keep stuff that... look at that thing roll. I like to keep stuff around because you never know, I'm always doing some kind of project. So I'm hoping that 3 of these springs, one of which is, I don't think it's from the same thing, but it doesn't matter. We're going to use it anyways, maybe in the middle. They're going to come around somewhere here to the center, right up here. I'm going to have to make a notch in this block here, or in this pipe, just to clip those in. And they're going to be under some tension so that when we're pushing snow, like I was explaining, it doesn't flip onto itself. So let's get to that. All right, step 1 of probably many. First thing I want to do is I want to install that stop that I was talking about. So this is going to get put down right here. So I'm going to weld this angle iron right up here somewhere, nice and solid, so that the bottom contacts over here. I'm going to be cutting it. It doesn't need to be this long. And that this way here, this hinge point will stop right where it is now. Now if I go straight up and down and look at this angle here, you guys notice how it's kind of angled down this way a little bit? I want it that way because if it was the opposite way, these little springs are going to have to do all the work when I'm plowing, and I don't think they're going to do all that work. So we're going to make them rest against this heavy duty chunk of steel. And I hope that that's going to work. So now, all there's left to do is cut that chunk, weld it in place. Okay, this is where we are now. We've got the plow set up so that the hinge is now being stopped by our heavy-duty steel. And guys, that was one of the heaviest cuts I've had to do in a long time. Took me quite a while. Happy that I was on high speed. So now, if I push down here, the plow will actually lift at the end, which is awesome. But we also don't want it to flop around this way very easily, which is where the springs come into play, right? So we're going to mount the springs right here. I'm going to put a hole into this chunk of metal right there. At this end, what I'm going to do is I'm going to weld. Let me grab it. I'm going to weld a nut so that it can hook up. Hard to do this with one hand here, guys. Sorry about that. Something like this, and that's going to hook up down there. We're going to put these two under tension. We're going to have one on each side, and I'm going to try it out. In worst case scenario, if we need more spring tension, I've got this third one which I can mount somewhere along here. I don't know, we'll do the same thing. I might just put it in just because. Actually, you know what, rather than doing it twice, let's just do it right away. So let's get those springs mounted. Okay guys, so we got the spring mounted. Well, all 3 springs, because like I said, I wasn't going to do this twice. But I've done it like 5 times already. And I'll show you why. Everything looks good, right? So we got plenty of spring tension on here, especially this little guy in the middle. But if you remember in the last video, I was talking about having maybe a leaf spring going across the top here to do all of this work. That might have been the better way to go. But I couldn't find any leaf springs in the backyard or anything like that. Of course, this is a budget build like everything else on the channel. But I want to show you what's going on right now. So if I put this down onto the ground here, there's not enough spring tension. So if I was to attach the rear to the quad, these are just going to drag along the snow or on the ground, and that's not good at all. So I got to kind of go back to the, I mean, there's definitely some spring tension, but it needs to be much more than this. So what I'm going to have to do is go back to the drawing board here, and I'm thinking I'm going to cut these nuts off the bottom here and bring them further up and give these guys a lot of tension. I've already added an extra little bit of spacer here, whatever I could find, to try and make this work. This is turning out to be an ugly looking plow, but I don't care. I just want it to work. That's what it's all about, right? So let's try doing those things and see if we can actually make this work. Okay, all right, this is looking all right. I mean, this is possibly going to work, guys. I mean, check it out. So now that it's actually holding itself up, I actually physically got to step on it and put quite a bit of weight on there for it to drop, which is what I want, because I want it to be able to support itself when we're plowing, and the only time it's ever going to need to angle is when we winch. So that's kind of going to work. I'm really happy with that. So I'm going to mount it on the bike. I'm going to try it real quick with the winch, see if it goes up and down, and then after that, all we need to do is finish weld it. Oh, sorry, we need to add my support between these 2 foot pegs, because I don't want those to collapse either. So we'll cut that up, we'll add that in, and then we'll finish weld everything, because as you can tell, everything is just tacked together. And I'm going to show you how to use your welder. I mean, I was asked by a couple of viewers how to weld, or if I could do a quick little demonstration of what you can do with a welder, because a welder is a super good investment for your shop once you know how to use it. So I'm going to do maybe something like this. I'll show you guys how to weld that up. I'm not a professional by any means, but I'll show you what I know. Alright, so it's all mounted up. I mean, temporarily, I've only got one lock in place at the back. Now, moment of truth, let's see what the winch will do. Yes! Yes, it's working. Check it out. Okay. Alright. So that's not what I was expecting. It does lift though, so how high can we get this without having it kind of collapse onto itself here? A little more maybe. Then it gets to tipping point. Right about there, that's about right. Doesn't seem like it wants to tip here. So it's more height, clearly, than we had before. Because if you remember before, all I had ever got out of the plow was only, let me see if I can get my tape measure out here, it was only 2 inches. So, making a bunch of noise here, I'm excited. So I've gained exactly 4.5 inches. It's a lot of work, holy crap. But at this point, I'm not giving up. I'm gonna make some kind of a stopper here so that, yeah, so this would be the best way to explain it. I'm gonna make a stopper so that it can't go further out. I'll probably use another piece of angle iron because I have more of that left over. And I guess that's all I'm gonna ever get is about 6 inches of, let's say, lift on this thing. So, but that's okay. It's more than what I need, really. I was hoping that this thing was gonna lift up like a full foot. Okay, so we got the stops put in place. What I've done is I've actually boxed everything in so that it's a little bit stronger because I'm not, I don't have too much heavy gauge steel left. And speaking of heavy gauge steel, I want to show you guys how to weld a little bit of heavy gauge steel. We're going to do a pass on this guy. So we're going to go top to bottom. We're going to get it all the way down to the other tack over here. I'm going to set the camera up as good as I can here for you guys. I'm not sure how this is going to work. I've never actually tried doing any of this on camera. I want to do a quick weld. I want to demonstrate what you need to do in order to make sure that your weld is actually going to do really well and it's going to be strong. So first thing you need to do is make sure everything is clean. It's a good idea to make sure there's no paint or rust on any of this stuff. I have a little bit of rust and I have a little bit of paint, but my welder is going to be able to weld through it. I'm going to basically burn through it. And I like to use, because we're vertical right now, I like to have my wand at a slight angle up here, and I'm going to do a pass in a U shape going all the way up from the top, make my way down to the bottom. I'm going to stop halfway, and I'm going to move on to this side, because you can easily warp everything if you do continuous welds for a long period of time. So let's just get welding here and see how it turns out. Alright, so how does that look? I didn't obviously go all the way, but I wanted to show you guys that what I think right now I could use on this weld, I could use a little bit more heat. So I'm going to go dial up my welder and let's continue welding and see what changes here. So as you can tell, the sound of it is a little bit different and we're getting a flatter weld. It's not perfect, but what you're going to be doing constantly based on a number of variables is you're going to be playing with the heat, and you're also going to be playing with the amount of spool, like how fast the wire is coming out, because that's also going to affect your weld quality. So I hope that helped out a couple of you guys, because like I said earlier, some people were asking me a little bit about how I do this. I'm not exactly a welder by any means. My uncle is, however, and there is another guy that I worked with for many years that gave me a bunch of good tips, and I'm very helpful for that and very thankful for that, I should say. So anyways, let's finish welding this whole entire plow. Let's throw it outside, give it a shot, and see how it works out. Okay, so it's all welded up. I went through every joint, made sure it was good. Let's take a closer look at these welds. Like I was saying earlier, I'm not exactly a professional welder, so I'd love anybody to comment below and let me know if I could have done better or what I could have changed on this weld, for example. But, you know, even over here, plenty strong for what I'm going to be doing here. Welds like that. I'm happy with it. And as you notice here, this is the bottom of the plow, and you're going to say, well, you didn't finish weld that. And I didn't for a specific reason, at this end or at this end. And that's because if there's any moisture, it makes its way into this tube, it'll be able to come out. So I did that over here, and I did it over here as well. So the only thing left to do now is, well, I mean, quite obviously would be to paint it. But before we paint it, in case there's another thing I have to weld on it, and I don't want to have to grind everything down, I'm going to put it down, mount it to the bike, and let's go try it. Alright, so let's see how well this is actually going to work. I mean, I have no idea. I'm thinking, to be quite honest with you guys, this design might not have been the best one. I kind of went with the flow. Hopefully it works, and we're going to find out right now. Well, imagine that, guys. It actually does work. I'm actually fairly impressed with it. It's pushing a lot of snow. Granted, this is not very heavy snow, and there is a good base. I have a lot of ice built up right now, so it's not catching too much on anything. It is scraping very well. Raising it is going to be a bit of a chore for me because I have to get used to my switches up here. That's literally not a big deal. We're going to get used to that as we go. But I'm happy with it. I really hope you guys really liked the video. If you did, give me a thumbs up, and I hope to catch you guys all in the next video. Thanks for watching. Wait, before you go, I figured you guys want to see what the plow would look like all freshly painted. Here it is. I mean, it's amazing how a little bit of paint can hide so many little imperfections, but this is what it looks like, all freshly painted. Looks actually quite nice. I'm very impressed. And that's where you can tell some of the welds are nicer looking than when they were before. Anyways, guys, that's it. See you guys next time.